tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about the 5 things that I did to prepare myself for business ownership. As you may know, I started originally as a law enforcement officer in Luxembourg in Europe, and then I immigrated to the United States and eventually became a business owner. I now have a team of 13 people. Last year we made $600,000 in revenue, and this year we have the ambitious goal to reach $1 million. And I just wanted to share tonight with you the 5 tips that, looking back at that journey, 5 tips that I want to give you so that you can prepare yourself to be on the path of business ownership as well, if that is something that you have in store for you. And if not, that's totally fine, because it's not something that everyone should do. I'm also going to talk about the difference of, when I was a freelancer and then now I'm a business owner with people that work for me and with me. That is very, very different. So let me check here on LinkedIn. I just want to make sure I see your comments and questions. If you have any, definitely put a comment in there so that I can react to it. Tell me a good evening and where you're from, and I want to definitely make sure that I go back to it later and follow up with you and look at your profile and your content. This is also streaming on different platforms, so wherever you are, I promise I will go back and check it out. So the first tip I have for you really is that something I shared yesterday on my profile is that you really overestimate what you can achieve in a year, and you largely underestimate what you can achieve in 5 years, and you even underestimate even more what you can do in 10 years. It is absolutely crazy. 10 years ago, that was, give or take, when I arrived in the United States. I had just come from Luxembourg and I started my studies at Miami University in Ohio. And, I was basically up until that point, I was a law enforcement officer. And I went and studied interactive media studies, which is very helpful right now in what I do as the owner of a healthcare marketing agency. So the first tip is that you should always believe in the long-term vision that you have, and you should have a certain patience within you, a certain faith within you that at some point you will get to where you want to be. And you have to know and accept that that might take years to really materialize. I remember as a 16-year-old, I had already a entrepreneurial drive, if you will. I tutored students, and I always had a little side income like that. And I always considered the importance of giving value to others. Then when I entered my career as a law enforcement officer, I was, of course, very happy to do that. I learned a ton of skills that are relevant to business, actually. But I never forgot in the back of my mind that I had this plan of immigration, and I knew that with that immigration, a certain business ownership would follow. I didn't know at what point. I assumed, and I was correct, that I would first become employed in a company, and then later down the road, I would open up my own business. I did not necessarily know what it was, but I had an idea that it would involve teaching. Back then, being a tutor, I thought maybe it would be a tutoring business, but in a way, what we are doing as marketers is also informing people, letting people know about what products and services are available, right? So again, the tip here is to never give up your vision, carry it in your heart, have faith in yourself, and be patient. It may take years until you get to the point where your vision unfolds, but it will. And with the vision in mind, you can also take steps that prepare the field to lead you down that path of fulfilling your vision. As an example, I knew that I was going to be in the United States, so I had to make sure that I was proficient in English. So I put extra effort into learning the English language. All right, so tip number 2 would be start early. Okay, so what do I mean with that? Again, that it has to do with what I said. Even as a 16-year-old, I started tutoring and I started accepting money in exchange for services. And that is just something you want to get used to, exchanging value as early as possible. When I was a student at Miami University in 2011, during my studies, I actually founded my first company in the US, my first LLC. It was, interestingly enough, who would have known, a tutoring business. The name was tutorch.llc, and pretty quickly it turned into rendering web development services, because that was what I was studying at university. So I was not perfect yet. I had not finished my studies yet, but I was ready and willing to accept money in return for those services. And that is just something that is very important to start early, because I can tell you that the email newsletter that I started back then is still the same email newsletter with people that I added back then. That must have been in 2012 or 13. And, people that got to know me back then as someone who offers web development services to this day are still in contact with me and sometimes send me referrals. Actually, some of them even are still clients of mine. I actually worked in a food co-op in Oxford, Ohio, and I was first doing cashier work. I was basically doing the register, but slowly but surely they knew that I had skills in web development, and I started working on the website. And to this day, Moon Co-op in Oxford, Ohio is one of our clients. Okay, so start early is tip number 2. The next tip would be to learn from others. That is very important. When I graduated from university, I could have immediately jumped into freelancing, into being my own boss, but I chose not to. And here is why. It's very important to give yourself the chance to get to know a business model, a way of doing things that you can then later apply and add your own flavor to it. For example, in software development and in website development, there are certain project management skills. There's the waterfall approach, and then there's the agile approach. And really, I got to work for a wonderful employer right after graduation, Engaged Partners in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I was able to be part of a large team and every role was represented that makes up a perfect software development team, right? So there was a business analyst, there were designers, there were project managers, developers, lots of other people I probably forget right now, but I saw a model. I got to know a model of how to do things when you build website projects. And that was very important because when I started freelancing later, I had something that I could take inspiration from. I don't think that I would have ever gotten that from books or from workshops. Maybe if you are a very good self-paced learner, that is possible to achieve. But for me, it was just amazing to be employed in my field of study for that year. Something else that is very powerful is you make those professional connections during that time when you join companies, and really your network is everything. As you know, it is true here in the United States, and I think it's true everywhere. People open opportunities to you, people give referrals to you, people give advice to you. So make sure, if you can, if you have the time for it, and if you feel so inclined, to give yourself the chance to learn within a group as an employee or as a contractor before you throw yourself into being self-employed. Not to say that there are not people who can make that happen, but not everyone can, and it's a lot easier if you have something to model after. So that was the third tip. The fourth tip is you transition into freelancing or into business ownership in a way that just makes you feel comfortable, right? For some of you, that might be a gradual transition, and for others, it might just be you have a certain date in mind, and once that date is, you reach that date, you just go from being an employee to being a freelancer. I always thought that that was the case for me, but now, speaking about it, I realized that I had, as they call, moonlighted for a while. Basically started at college and then started freelancing on the kept freelancing on the side, moonlighting on the side until graduation, because when I did get my full-time job in Cincinnati, I didn't have time to freelance. But life happened. I had to give that position up and move to Chicago, and I accepted a new position a little bit too fast. It was not a good match. And then I decided to kind of rekindle my freelancing activities. So in a way, it was a gradual process. So that was probably in 2015-ish. That's my guess, when I was there in Chicago. And then I stayed working for myself for quite some time, until 3 years ago, when I accepted to work with, I basically accepted my first team member besides me on the team, and that opened up my horizon to working with other people. And the rest is history, as they say. Business grew very fast. I had to add people to my team, and even now at this point, I'm thinking about adding people. It's just the bigger your team is, the more complex the management side of things gets, and you need to work on your business instead of in your business, right? So that's tip number 4. And tip number 5 would be that you need to always work with mentors, okay? At no time during this whole process did I rely solely on my own wisdom. I always had someone to reach out to and to ask how they did things, okay? And especially when I started freelancing, I paid for online courses that were self-paced. And I remember there was, when I started my first year of freelancing, I think my income was $20,000. And I had this big vision to reach six figures. And I remember there was a course, freelance to 250K, that I took. It was quite an investment, but it was worth it, right? Because I took advice from people who were already at a point where I wanted to be. And so after I had kind of reached that goal in my career, I always started looking for mentors who were a few steps ahead of myself. It just makes sense, right? Because it's just so much easier to learn from people who are where you want to be in a few months or years. Right now, for example, I am part of a group called Entrepreneurs Organization Launch, EO Launch, here in San Antonio. And they're basically a mentorship program and a group for very established and seasoned, awesome entrepreneurs here in San Antonio. And you got to get to $1 million in revenue to be part of the actual EO group, right? So I mean EO Launch. So I have 3 years to meet the requirements to get into the big group. And, there's a membership fee, and I pay it happily because it is so important to always get mentorship from others. So these were my 5 tips to prepare yourself for business, if that is something that is that you are interested in. Again, don't forget, ask your questions. Put something in the comments. I will go back and make sure I react to it and I connect with you. I want to see what you're doing online. And let me quickly maybe repeat the 5 tips so you have them all within a minute here. The first one is believe in your vision always, right? Have your vision, carry that deep in your heart, and have faith in yourself. The second one is start as early as possible, even if it's in a very minimal way. Just like when I was as a 16-year-old, I started tutoring because I knew that at some point I would probably exchange my services for money. And I had a feeling it consisted in teaching or transferring knowledge. Tip number 3, learn from others. Right out of school or right out of a boot camp or whatever you self-taught, try to work with a group of people as an employee, for example, for a year, so you get to see a model that you can then add your own flavor to later. Tip number 4, transition slowly into your business, whether that is freelancing or a brick and mortar or having team members. Do that in a way where it is comfortable to you. For some of you, it might be a good idea to do that progressively, and for others, it's just better to burn the bridges, as they say, and jump right into it. Make sure that there's no fallback. This almost seems like bad advice, but for some people it works, right? They just want to know that there is no other option other than succeeding. And then the tip number 5 was work with mentors. Okay, join mentorship programs. That money that you invest into mentorship programs is the best investment you will ever make as a business owner or freelancer, right? Because it's a shortcut. It's like adding fuel to a fire that you have started, right? And sometimes these mentorship programs are a little bit pricey, but that is typically an indication of the quality and also it acts as a barrier. It acts as a vetting process. If people pay a certain amount of money for a mentorship program, then that means that the people inside of the mentorship program are of very high quality, and they are serious about what they do, and they just mean business, literally. Okay, so don't be afraid to do that. Again, if you have any questions, and let me know. I also write an occasional newsletter, and I share a lot of my thoughts about business and marketing and influence and personal development. If that is something of interest to you, I think I can blend in the link to sign up for it, but I'll also make sure it's in the comments. But yeah, here it is. link.schenkxwebdev.com/newsletter sign up. That is where you can go and be part of that group of people who get an email from me every now and then. All right, this was great. I hope you have a great rest of your night, and don't forget to leave me a comment so that I can be in touch with you. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time.